Hey y'all, welcome to the channel. My name is Sean, this is UCM Pigs, and today I'm going to be doing the rocker box gaskets on my 2016 Ultra. It's running a 103, but before we get started, let me remind you to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always on my channel, if you don't feel like typing words, just leave me an emoji. Let me know you're here. I would greatly appreciate that. So we're going to get right into this. We're not going to waste a lot of time with intro. I'm going to show you the indications that I have that I need to replace these gaskets. We're going to go over some of the materials and tools that are necessary for doing this job, and we're going to get right into this. So as you can see, I've got the tank in the seat and the heat deflectors off of the bike. Right back here, you can see I've got some oil seeping right there. That's where the lower gasket is underneath the rocker box. So that's telling me that this lower gasket's probably blown. I do have a little bit of oil seeping here on the upper gasket. Up here between the jugs, there's a little bit of oil in there. So I at least know this rear one, the rear gasket there is blown, but we're replacing both and we'll see what we get into. Okay, so the first thing that we're gonna need, obviously, are new gaskets. These are James Gaskets. This is a complete gasket kit for the twin cam 103. It has the both the upper and lower rocker box gaskets, all the O-rings, the gaskets for your vents, the baffles, pretty much everything in one kit. Has a list of all the part numbers. All this is going to be linked in the description. I ordered this through RevZilla. And as I said, this is the James Gasket Kit. This is what we're going to be using to replace the gaskets. Right here we have a set of dog bones, and really we're only going to need 2 of them. If you're not familiar with dog bones, what these allow you to do is when you're torquing bolts that are in hard to reach places, you can put them on your torque wrench and extend it and kind of get it up in that hard to reach places. There are a couple bolts on top of the heads that we're going to need to use dog bones. You're really only going to need the 7/16 and the 1/2 inch. Again, I'll put a link in the description to this kit that has everything. I went ahead and ordered the kit instead of ordering just the 2, because for the price of 2 dog bones, I got a whole kit. So it's a little more, value, more bang for your buck there, that you might need to reuse this or on another project. You're going to need a dead blow hammer, because we're going to have to knock those rocker boxes off once we get the bolts out. Harbor Freight, good old Harbor Freight. You're going to need a couple torque wrenches. This is an adapter for my air compressor, so I can have some compressed air, because for 2 reasons. We're going to be blowing the engine off to get any loose particles off the backbone and stuff, and then when we break this down, we're going to have to clean the bolt holes out, and we're going to be using some brake clean and compressed air, so we want to make sure we get all the old oil and thread lock and all that stuff out of the bolt holes. Speaking of thread lock, you want to have some blue Loctite. We're going to be applying blue Loctite to all of our bolts. We're going to be using the brake clean also for cleaning off all the old gasket. We may need a scraper. I just use little razor blades, and I also use a little Scotch-Brite. We'll cut a little piece off here. You get this at any part store, and this is what we're going to use to clean that old gasket material off of our rocker box covers and our heads. You want to have some good assembly lube. Harley Davidson sells theirs. This is Lucas. It's basically just a really thick lubricant that we're going to be applying on any parts, especially the rockers to the exhaust and intake valves and the tops of the push rods. Anywhere that there's metal to metal contact, when we're putting this back together clean, we want to give it a good lubricant on those metal to metal contacts until the engine can circulate the oil up into the top of the rockers. So this is a crucial part of this job, is you don't want to mar up some metal on metal parts. And then lastly, you want some really good lint-free towels. Ordered these on Amazon. Again, there will be a link in the description. Just a good lint-free towel, because we want to make sure all the openings in the engine are going to be covered and protected when we're working, and we're not getting lint down into them. Alright, so we're going to remove this rear rocker box cover. There are 6 bolts, 3 on each side. The sequence for removing them is the left side center is going to be first, then the right side center will be second, the front bolt on the left third, rear bolt on the right fourth, then we're going to go to rear bolt on the left fifth, and front bolt on the right sixth. 7/16 on this side, because I have the backbone in the way underneath here. I'm just going to be using a 7/16 ratchet just to break these loose. Now, one thing I want to point out is the right side bolts are longer than the left side bolts. So you want to make sure you take note of that. Now, there is a tool you can use instead of using a 7/16. There's actually a rocker box tool that you can purchase. I'll put a picture in here. I didn't really see the need into purchasing a tool specifically for this because, yeah, a little more work with two different tools, using a box end and a ratchet. But yeah, if you were doing this, you know, on a professional level or doing this a lot, then I would recommend probably getting that tool. So let's go ahead and get the rest of these bolts out and we'll move on to the front. All right, so this is the part of the project where we get to take a hammer to the bike. Sometimes you can just give it a pop with the heel of your hand like I just did, and it pops right loose. So I didn't even need the dead blow hammer, but you want to just take it and give it a couple sharp blows right here in the corner, not too hard. You don't want to mar it up, but as you can see, I was able to pop it loose with the heel of my hand. So we're going to go ahead and remove this rear rocker box cover. You want to be real careful. These gaskets are razor sharp. So see here, that actually came off easier than I thought. And just looking at the gasket, I mean, this upper gasket doesn't look too bad. All right, so we're moving on to the front rocker box cover. The sequence for these bolts are going to be center left 1, center right 2, rear left 3, rear front 4, excuse me, front up here, number 4. The left side in the front is going to be 5, and the left side in the rear is going to be 6. So I'm going to go ahead and remove those again. 7/16 socket. I can get my ratchet in here because there's plenty of clearance. So, and we'll see if we can get lucky with this one with the palm of our hand instead of the dead blow hammer. Bingo. And that lifts right off. And again, this gasket looks like it's pretty much intact. Like I said, I think it is the lower rocker box gaskets, and we'll figure that out once we get there. We'll go ahead and take this one off and get rid of it. All right, so we're over here on the left side of the bike, and I've got the spark plugs removed. We need to put the bike in 6th gear so we can turn the rear tire, so that way we can bring our piston to top dead center before we remove the rockers. So I'm gonna go ahead and take a piece of this is where we're switching over to lint-free towels now. I've got things open. I don't want anything down in my engine, so we're just going to stuff this towel down in here to block these spark plug openings. All right, so the next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be removing this rocker cover and the vent port in here. So there's 4 bolts for the rocker cover and then 2 bolts for the vent port. But before we do that, we want to make sure this piston is at top dead center. Now, mine is at top dead center right now because I've been dicking around with it and I finally got it there. And I actually learned a pretty cool way of doing it. But the indication that it's at top dead center, both your intake and your exhaust valves should be closed at the same time, and your rocker should jiggle a little bit back and forth. You see there, I got a little bit of, you hear it knocking back and forth. I got a little movement there. That means I've relieved all the pressure off of these push rods and everything. All right, so as I mentioned, I had my spark plugs out in both cylinders, and I had a piece of this lint-proof cloth on top of it. You want to remove that, and you want to get yourself, something wooden, not metal. We don't want to mess up the top of our piston. I got a chopstick. And we're going to stick it down the spark plug hole. And if you listen, right there's the top of my piston at top dead center. So what you can do is to find it, we're just going to start it all over again. We're going to rotate the wheel backwards, and we're going to put our finger lightly over the hole. And you should feel air pushing out. Right now it's sucking, so went down. It's difficult to turn this back. Well, there we go. There's the air rushing out. And that should have been it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick my chopstick in there, find the top of the piston, and I can feel it. That's going down. Back it up, 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 down, up. That's it right there. Top dead center of my piston. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to loosen the bolts for the breather assembly. There's one here in the front and one back here in the back. It's a 3/8 bolt. We're going to go ahead and back those out. We're going to leave them in. We're going to leave everything intact. We're just going to get the bolts out. And then we're going to go ahead and remove the rocker assembly. 4 bolts, 2 here, and then 2 on the left side. There's a sequence for those. I'll put a picture in here. We'll follow that sequence. And the key thing here is when we loosen these bolts, we're only going to do them a 1/4 turn at a time until they're completely free. This is crucial. We don't want to warp anything in this head, so we want to be nice and careful, take our time, and do those. So let's get the breather assembly loose first, and then we'll move on to this rocker assembly. And I forgot to mention, these are 1/2" bolts. All right, so I've got all 4 bolts loosened, and we're going to go ahead and lift this rocker assembly out of here. Now this is going to take some finessing. There's really not a lot of clearance here, but not too bad. And there's our rocker assembly. So we're going to take this and set it over to the side. So what we're going to do now is we're going to be removing these rocker boxes. And again, there's a bolt sequence. I'll put a picture in here out of the shop manual, and it's pretty much going to be this bolt here in the front first, and then we're going to move back to the back corner, and then we'll remove that bolt. There's 6 bolts in total. Then we're going to go up to the back corner, then to the front corner on the left side, and then we're going to cross over to the rear right bolt, and then we'll come up here to the center bolt. That'll be number 5, and then the rear center would be number 6. And I believe these they look like they're 7/16 bolts. We'll check here. I think they are. Yep, they're 7/16 bolts. I'll probably have to use my dog bone to get those loose back there because it's kind of tight here on this rear. All right, so I've got all 6 bolts out. We'll see if we can get lucky with the palm of our hand here, and nope. So we're going to take our deadfall hammer and give it a couple pops just to see if we can break this loose. There we go. And we'll lift this rocker box out. Again, keep in mind there's a gasket in there and it is razor sharp. And this is going to come out. So let's take a look here. And yeah, so we can see this gasket all along there is pretty much shot, especially back here. You can see the buildup of all the oily residue. I can see it all down in there, and yeah, it was time to replace this. Okay, so again, using the chopstick method, I found the top dead center. You can see here my rockers have got some play in them, so I'm at top dead center. We're going to go ahead and loosen the bolts for the breather assembly, and then using the sequence from the shop manual for the front cylinder, it's going to be 1 front left bolt, 2 rear right bolt, 3 front right bolt, and 4 rear left bolt. So that'll be our sequence, and we're going to be doing a 1/4 inch, or excuse me, a 1/4 turn until we get them completely loose. All right, so I've got all the bolts loose, and we're going to lift this rocker assembly out of here and set it aside. So this one comes out a lot easier than the rear. And again, don't assume your bolt pattern's the same. We're going to refer to the shop manual. Again, I'll put a diagram in here of the bolt pattern. So for the front cylinder, we're going to start with this rear right bolt, number 1, front left corner bolt, number 2, then rear left corner bolt, number 3, right front corner bolt, number 4, and then we'll go back here to the rear center for number 5, and then the front center, number 6. and we'll loosen in that sequence. Alright, so I've got the 6 bolts out, and we're going to give it a little pop with a dead blow hammer. There we go. And lift this one right off as well. Gasket's a little sticky. Be careful, those gaskets, remember, razor sharp. This one, don't see any really big blowouts on it, maybe in here, but doesn't matter, we're replacing it anyway. Alright, so this is where I'm going to start cleaning off the top of this head, and there's a lot of gasket residue. There's oil buildup on here, and we want to be careful not to rake anything towards, you know, where the push rods are, or down here where the exhaust and intake valves are. We want to keep all the debris out of the engine. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be working away from the holes, and I'll just use some lint-free cloth here and just take this Scotch pad and scrub down these surfaces to make sure I've removed all of the old gasket material, because we want to get a good seal. The other thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be cleaning out these bolt holes, because there's going to be oil, there's going to be leftover Loctite down in the bolt holes. So I'll be spraying some brake cleaner down in them, and then using some compressed air, blowing it out to dry them out, because when we torque these down, we want to get a good torque setting, and we don't want to have any liquid down in there that's going to create unnecessary pressure and cause some damage to the head, and then not get a good torque setting on these bolts. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and clean out all these bolt holes in the head. So I'm going to take a little lint-free cloth here, cover up all these places I don't want stuff to go down, and we're going to spray a little brake clean down in there. That hole out. And we're going to do that for each one of these bolt holes until we get them all cleaned out. And we've got everything laid out here on the bench. So what we're looking at here right now is pretty much everything for the front head, or the front cylinder, because we're going to be doing that one first because it's still at top dead center. So what I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to be cleaning all this up. So we have the actual rocker box, so we have a lot of gasket material here on the back side. On the front, we'll be cleaning up that, pretty much using brake clean and some Scotch-Brite, and we'll clean this all up nice and clean. We have our breather assembly. This is going to be rebuilt, so you have this old medium inside. That's all going to be thrown away. That gasket's got to come off. There's a diaphragm here on top. All this is in my kit, as well as the gasket that's on the rocker housing is going to have to come off too. All will be cleaned up. I've got all my bolts separated here. So over here are the bolts for the actual rocker box. I'm going to be cleaning these all up with a little bit of a wire brush and some brake clean. Everything's going to be cleaned up with new Loctite to be applied to it. The rocker box cover, again, it's going to be cleaned up. And then I have all my new gaskets. These are the new medium for the breather assemblies. I've got several gaskets, O-rings. There is an O-ring here for your breather port. We'll be replacing that. Alright, so I've got everything cleaned up, and that was a bear. Especially this gasket material for the vent valve here on top of the rocker assembly. Getting all that old gasket material out, and then cleaning up this old vent assembly. Yeah, that's a lot of work. Got it all cleaned. It's got some staining, but all the gasket material's gone. So I'm ready to go ahead and start working on the other side. It took me about an hour to clean the front cylinder. We're going to go ahead and get the rear cylinder cleaned up. Just wanted to show you this breather assembly real quick, how it goes together. So it comes with a new diaphragm and a new gasket. So you put your new gasket in place, new diaphragm, new absorbent material in there. That lays on top, and then take the bolts, cleaned all the bolts. We're going to run these through, and then it drops right into place right down here. Just like so. So I'm going to go ahead and move this rocker assembly, and we're going to go ahead and get Loctite on all 6 of the housing bolts and get these back in place. Alright, so for lack of better words, these gaskets are ambidextrous. So they're the same on either side. If you notice, there's like a channel here, and we want that to line up with this channel here on top of the head. So we're going to get our orientation straight with these two loopy things on this side. On the left side of the bike, our channel lined up with our breather channel, and just drop it in place. Now we'll line this up with the bolts once we get everything married up. Alright, so I've gone ahead and applied blue Loctite to all my bolts, and we're going to go ahead and set this in place and get this lined up with some of the bolt holes of the gasket. So I'll put a picture in here of the bolt pattern for reassembly, or for the sequence. So basically we're going to start here with this rear right side bolt, number 1. Then we're going to cross over here to the front left, 2. Come back to the rear left, 3. And then we're going to go over to the front right, 4. And then we're going to cross over here to the rear middle, 5. And then the final one would be the front middle, 6. And these are going to be torqued down to 135 to 155 inch-pounds. Alright, so before we go any further here, we're going to apply some assembly lube, and we're going to apply it to the top of our push rods and the top of our intake and exhaust valves back here. Let's apply some of this stuff on top of this push rod. As you can see, real stringy. And we'll put some top these exhaust and intake valves back here. And I'm also going to apply it to the underside of the rocker box, or the rockers, where they make contact. Alright, so I've applied my assembly lube on the back side of the rockers, got my thread lock in place, my new O-ring for the breather assembly installed, and we're going to go ahead and set the rocker up in here. And as always, we're going to follow the bolt sequence. And the bolt sequence for here, again, I'll put a picture in here of that from the shop manual, but we are going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to take these down to snug, and then at that point it'll be 1/4 inch turns until we torque them down to 18 to 22 foot-pounds of torque. So again, once they get snug, we'll do 1/4 inch turns in that sequence, torque them down. I'll go ahead and start the breather bolts, but then there needs to be a resting period, basically a bleed down period of about 15 to 20 minutes. We're going to let the bike set, we'll let it bleed down, and then we'll torque down the 2 breather bolts, and we'll be ready to put the cover back on. Alright, so it's been about 20 minutes. We've let it bleed down, and I'm going to go ahead and torque down the breather assembly bolts to 120 to 156 inch-pounds. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and put our rear rocker box assembly in place here, or housing, I should say. I've already got blue Loctite on the bolts. I'll go ahead and just finger start them. Now I know we're definitely going to have to use the dog bone for these left side bolts. There's not much clearance between the top of the bolt and the frame, but we'll deal with that when we get there. Alright, so I mentioned our sequence for tightening for this rear cylinder. Again, pictures in here. We're going to start with the front right bolt, and then we'll go back here to the rear left bolt, and then we'll go to the front left bolt, then across to the rear right bolt, front middle bolt, rear middle bolt. And that's our sequence for tightening these up. So I'm going to snug them down, and we're going to tighten those down to 135 to 155 inch-pounds of torque. So I've got it at top dead center. I'm going to go ahead and apply some assembly lube to the top of the push rods and the valves back here. All right, I've applied some assembly lube underneath here. I've got my bolts pre-Loctited, and we'll set this in place. And just like the front, when we reassemble this, we're going to follow the recommended bolt pattern. Again, I'll put a picture in here for you. And for the rear cylinder, it's going to be this back left bolt will be number 1, front right bolt number 2, rear right bolt number 3, front left bolt number 4. So I'm going to snug these down, and then at that point we'll be doing 1/4 inch turns until we get those to 18 to 22 foot-pounds of torque. Alright, so everything's torqued down for those 4 bolts. We're going to let it do its bleed down for 20 minutes. Then we'll tighten this breather assembly, and then we'll be ready to put our final gaskets on and our covers, torque all those bolts down, and we'll be done. Alright, so while we're waiting on the rear to bleed down, we're going to go ahead and get the gasket in place for the rocker box cover. There we go. So everything lines up with the bolt holes. I'm going to go ahead and pre-Loctite my bolts, and we'll get this cover in place. Alright, so let's get this rocker box cover here in place. There we go. And if you don't remember, the short bolts are on the left side, the long bolts are on the right side. So we'll go ahead and get some bolts in there to line this gasket up. Alright, so for tightening the rocker box cover bolts, our bolt pattern, I'll put a picture in here, is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to go ahead and start tightening those up. I believe they were 7/16 bolts. And these are going to be torqued down to 15 to 18 foot-pounds. Alright. Front rocker box is done. Alright, so I've got everything buttoned up. I've got this last rocker box cover in place. Used the torque settings. It went down to, I think it was, it's 15 to 18 foot-pounds. Use the pattern. Here's a picture right out of the tech manual. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I believe is the way it went. So everything's back together. So now we're going to put the tank on there and the heat shields, and then the moment of truth, we'll fire this puppy up. Do a little cleanup. I got brake cleaner everywhere. Here's the moment of truth right here. I've already done this once. I'm going to do it again just for you. Let's make sure we're in neutral. Yep. So everything sounds okay. No crazy noises, so I think I did it right. But a pretty cut and dry job. The worst part was actually the cleanup. Once you break everything down, getting all the old gasket material off and cleaning the bolts and all that stuff, that was actually more tedious than the job. Once you start putting it back together, it's pretty simple, as long as you follow the shop manual. So, I hope you guys found this informative, and until we talk again, you guys be careful. You guys be safe. Always keep your shiny side up, and we'll talk to you next time.